Hello everyone, welcome to Drawing Studio class. Today we will look through the topic composition. This slide is owned by Mahidol University. Please do not copy, share or export any material except for your own study. What makes us interesting is it can lead your attention, right? This is the part as known as principle called emphasis, which refers to the use of visual elements to draw attention to a certain area, usually a focal point in an artwork. So what is the focal point? Focal point as known in another name as dominant point, which is the most important point that I naturally drawn to. The role of the focal point is be able to lead your attention, not only be at the center, but it can also in the different places. Next principle will be balance. What balance is? How elements in composition create their visual weight. Let's see this picture. Is this the picture balance? Do you know where is the center line of this picture? Are they in the middle? Yeah, it's what in the middle. And also they got two lines in this picture at the center of this Vitruvian man. How about this one? The center line is here, but actually it's not at the center, right? But it gives a feeling of balance feelings. And here, the line in here is actually off to left a bit, but for overall, it still feels balanced. All in all, balance is comfortable feeling and unbalanced is gonna be uneasy feeling. I remember playing seesaw when we were kids. It's exactly the same thing. First picture, at the top. You remember when you and your friend have the same weight. Seesaw is just hanging in there. We call this symmetrically balanced. And what about the picture at the bottom? Something is wrong here, right? This is unbalanced. And how do we keep the balance? Yes, the big fan can move closer to the center and balance is back. We can call this asymmetrically balanced, but that is not just only one solution. You can also have more fans to come help adding more weight on your side. Similar to balancing in art, there are many ways around to do it. Why balance is important? Without balance, people might not see all areas of your design. They probably won't spend any time in areas with less visual weight since it's not interesting and those information might not reach to them. That's why you would want to balance things in your design or in your drawing. You can even decide how to balance your information so your viewers spend right amount of time in information you want to convey to them. From the seesaw example, now we know there's not just one way to balance. Today we will talk about these four types of balance. First, symmetrically balanced is when both sides have equal weight in composition. Its real balances around exit in the center. Symmetrically balanced gives us feeling of formality, but sometimes it's boring. Because half of the composition mirrors the other half, at least half of the composition will be rather predictable like in this picture and in this example. Next is asymmetrically balanced. It results from unequal visual weight on each side of the composition. One side of the composition might contain a dominant element, which could be balanced by a couple lighter elements on the other side. Asymmetrically balanced is more dynamic and interesting. It involves movement, energy, and vitality. It has more visual variety, but can be a bit tricky to achieve since it's more complex to balance different elements. Next, radial balance. Radial balance is when elements radiate from a common center. Because everything radiates from a common center, everything also leads to the center, making it strong in focal point as point of attraction. Here is another sample when visual elements are repeated. Rhythm is set lead to the create creating the movement in the picture, let's have a look at the op-art period. In this example, artists use line to form a pattern. When line repeat instead of rhythm, it can also create the movement. And as you can see here, the movement lead your eye to the center of this artwork as well. And last one is mosaics or crystallographic balance. This all-over balance is the uniform, repetitive distribution of similar elements throughout the surface of design. Since it's a lot of similar elements carrying some time, the composition lacks distinct focal point and the elements share a uniform emphasis. The lack of hierarchy leads to visual noise at first glance. Somehow it's all work together. And here is another example of mosaic or crystallographic balance. Next principle that we will have a look is proportion. Proportion, as known as artistic judgment, which refer to dimension of composition, as well as is the relationship between height, width, and depth. This can be a measurement, which is the relationship of size of one element when compared to another. When the proportions are used, it creates a realistic image. This is Vitruvius Man by Leonardo da Vinci. It was his attempt at depicting the proportions of human body. Text around the image describes the scale and proportion of each part of the body. Proportion can be used for aesthetic effect as well as for realism. Proportion is related to the subject called composition, which is the placement or arrangement in visual elements. First, we will have a look at golden ratio, or is as known as golden section. Golden section is the proportion that occur in nature. It's a mathematical method for determining proportion based on the number of pi. An approximate number equal to 1.618. Here is the picture of how to draw the golden ratio. It relates to the number of pi. All proportion is built under the circle by starting with square and rectangular respectively. Look at this sample, the Annunciation by Leonardo da Vinci. Is there any golden ratio here? Yes, it is. It's located in the middle. Leonardo used this proportion as the guideline of adding focal points. As shown in this painting, he put all focal points following the golden ratio line. Another example from Hokusai the Wave. He used the golden ratio to create the composition that make the feeling of powerful and dynamic on his wave. Golden ratio is also related to the golden triangle, which these composition elements will follow the diagonal line. Frame is divided into 4 triangles, which created by one diagonal from the center and 2 lines from the corners, touching the diagonal in 90 degrees. How to use this composition is normally in the triangles or following the overlapping points or the proportion guidelines. Next will be rule of third. Rule of third is the general guideline to create interesting composition. It's popular in Photoshop. You can find this one at the camera viewfinder. For the proportion, it split an image in thirds vertically and horizontally, show up in grid form. The overlapping area are known as the focal point. Be in mind that don't need to fill all 4 focal points. It's better to pick just only some spot to fill. Here is the example in the picture called Amid Asleep by Johannes Vermeer. Can you see the rule of third in here? Yeah, it's in here and it's past just only one spot. Here is another example on the glass by Renoir, and the artist used the rule of third to make his focal point as well. Here the artist put focal point in 2 overlapping spots at the right hand side. Do you remember the picture in the balance? Why the line is not in the middle? Do you remember it's right? so it's not in the middle because the artist also used the rule of third to make the proportion looks more interesting, and as I showed you before, it's also got like golden ratio in this picture as well. This is the implementing the rule of thirds, so it's kind of the tips about how to use. Firstly, it can be you can put your focal point in the intersection spot, or it can put on exit, inline, or fill in the column or the row, or you can also put it into the diagonal line as well. Another one is gonna be triangular composition. Triangular composition is made up by two diagonal lines formed horizontal. It is the guide of your eye to three separate points. For triangular composition is one of the most strongest composition that you can find in many artists since the past until now, and it gives the feeling of coherent and dynamic. For the sense of visual unity, if the peak of the triangle is up, it's showing as superior aspect. If it's upside down, it's gonna show as interior. Do you see the triangular composition in Mona Lisa? Yes, it is in here. And how about the Madonna of the Rock? It's also in here, and in this picture, the triangular composition also gives the hierarchy of the picture. The Madonna here is the main subject that we will draw our eye to. So let's have a look a bit about the composition tips. Firstly, it's going to talk about the overlap. Overlap is the place objects slightly over one another. This will get the eye to move elements to another. Object should not touch other by edge, or we're gonna call it like kissing. Avoid isolation and build relationship between the object. Next will be cropping. We're gonna consider about the object go off the page. This get viewer get in and out picture, avoid folding and left a lot of space on page. Third one will be rotating. It's consider about the objects in angle, creating more dynamic composition and make it interesting. Perfectly lined up can be boring. Fourth one is will be focal point. It can build up the area of importance, giving viewers something to focus on. Achieve this is side variation, avoid the same side. Other way to create this is color dominance. Last one is will be off center, avoid the placing object directly and at the center of the page. Place the object slightly in one side will create more interesting composition. By the way, try to keep balancing between both sides. This is all for this class. Next will be the exercise for practice